So, this is a week when a lot of folks are on vacation, and I want to thank Rich and Dave for being part of the Skeleton Crew, and thank you for being here. This has been an awesome week at VBS. As I said, one of my favorite since I've been here, and I just look forward to so much more, and so glad, parents, that you took the time to make them available, and for all the people that made it possible. Thursday night, I get back from VBS and we're dancing and singing, and me and Caleb and some girls and guys have been jumping off and all around, and I sit down, to turn the TV on just for a little bit of mindlessness, and guess what I see on the TV? Breaking news. The shooting in Lafayette, Louisiana. And I saw that, 3 dead now, and how many, 9 injured, and I thought to myself, God, why? Here we go again. This is only a week after Chattanooga, Tennessee, and here we are dealing with some deranged and loner who's decided that whatever pain he's feeling, he's going to take it out on someone else, even before he takes his own life. And why, God, is this going on? And as I'm thinking about that and feeling powerless, I can't do anything about it. I can't control what the guns get into the right hands and stay out of the hands that may use them in terrible ways. I can't control what people do. I feel small in moments like that. Did anybody have that feeling this week as they were overwhelmed, if you were like me? And I felt really insignificant. No power out of my control. Friends, I'm sitting in that place, just overwhelmed with that sense of insignificance. All of a sudden, and I ascribe this to God, all of a sudden I was reminded. And here's the question that came to me. Mike, what have you been doing the last 4 hours before you went home? And I'm like, well, yeah, we were dancing. We were celebrating God's love. Kids were going crazy, bouncing off walls and off each other and off God. And it was the most amazing week. And it was a powerful celebration. And it occurred to me, that's just at Fulton First. How many other churches across the United States were celebrating VBS this past week? How many hundreds of thousands of children and their parents who came to experience it heard the message of God's love, even in trial and tragedy. God who says, I will be with you, reminding us that God is with us. Okay, I know I caught you off guard. Reminding us that God is with us.
Fear not.
Thank you. Terrible. 3 people lost their lives this week. And I'm still grieving in prayer about that. And I thought, how many hundreds of thousands of kids heard the word of life this week? The presence of God, the gift of hope, the power of faith across the United States. And they're not comparable numbers, because you can't. But they do remind us that even in the midst of trial and death and tragedy, God is proclaiming life and hope and promise and resurrection. And I was reminded about that. And I was reminded how significant you are in that. How significant it is what we do. Albert Einstein, remember this quote. This is what Albert Einstein said. He said that we have a choice. The most important decision we can make is whether we believe the universe is friendly or the universe is hostile. Let me repeat that. The most important choice we can make is a decision to whether the universe is friendly or the universe is hostile. And that's ultimately about trust. Allowing ourselves to trust that even in the midst of tragedy and sadness and grief and even pain, that God is moving, renewing, recreating, rehealing, rebonding all of creation. And most of the time, God does it through people just like you and me. And it's hard. That's about trust. It's about giving ourselves. It's about stepping out a little bit more, a little bit off of the safe zone and saying, God, I'm going to trust you even in the midst of this tough place. Even in the midst of stuff I don't understand. That's what faith is. It's not believing the right things. Faith is trusting with your heart and life that God will see us through and recreate new life. God's doing it. I saw it this week. But it's hard to go there, because if you're like me, there's breaking news on the TV all the time. This week, I'm playing on my laptop at home, during the day, doing some prep work at home, and I have a cable news channel on, and out of the corner of my eye I see that black and white and red breaking news, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, now what's happened? Guess what the breaking news was? Donald Trump is going to the border. Now, some of you may be happy Donald Trump went to the border. Great. But I'm going, is that really breaking news? Is that really where black and red and white sign? But we're so conditioned in this culture. Breaking news! Oh my gosh, we're on alert. And what often happens is instead of giving ourselves in hope and faith to something more and greater than ourselves, to being even more than we can be, we kind of take everything we have and we put it in a box or a mason jar and go down to the basement of the house and lock it away because it's so much a part of us. Now, Jesus was always inviting people to the God of life, to in Einstein's words, to trust that the universe is a friendly place. And let's be clear, Jesus lived in first century Palestine, and all of his people, his tribe, were being oppressed by the Romans. They were an occupying force, and those people were being killed. They were being oppressed. They were being persecuted. And yet he still said, God calls us to life, to a universe that is ultimately friendly. He says, look at the birds of the air. They don't struggle or toil. And God takes care of them and gives them everything they need. And aren't you and I more important than the birds of the air, Jesus said. So our path of significance begins first when we answer that question of Einstein. Which decision will we choose? If God has made this universe ultimately for good, or whether it's a fearful, hostile place in which we should hide. That's the seed that opens your heart to the power that God gives us, the gifts He hands out to make this a better place. And then a couple more things to finish here. That text that Rachel did and some bald dude pretended to reenact. We all matter. We all have a place in the choir. And VBS is the most powerful experience. There are others in this church, but there are none like it. Who's more important in VBS? Pastor Mike, who played Skeeter, or Ashley, who helped with the skit, or Andrew, who did the audio and video, or Glenda, who stood up here, or the ladies that did the food for us, the snacks, or the people who walked with those children through every group, every night, and demonstrated God's grace and love. Who's more important? If you look at it, you can't say one is more important than the other, because we all matter. Those helping kids be saved on the slides. We all matter in God's choir. And that's the church at its best. Living beyond ourselves, contributing to the common good, displaying with our lives the power and presence of God. In fact, I think VBS gives a special invitation because it invites us big kids to be kids again. I watched Karen O'Brien, who's not here. I don't want to tell you how old she is, but she's older than me. And she was dancing around like a child. And there's something about that reminds us what Jesus said, unless you become like a child, you cannot see the kingdom of God. How powerful. And finally, to remember that to walk that path of significance, that we all have something to offer. And there's no greater gift or lesser gift. What matters is whether we take the gifts God has given us in whatever form they come and use them to help God show the world that this universe, as difficult and painful as it can be, is a trustworthy place. That's why I'm a pastor. Because I believe that God has created a good universe. And it's filled with a lot of evil, and it's filled with a lot of bad things and some difficult things. But the truth is that God has come in Jesus to show us that if we give our hearts in faith and trust to the way of Jesus, we become incarnate reflections of the goodness of God, as human as we are. So you're looking for a path of significance. Remember that everybody's mad. Everybody matters. You're all important. You all are part of that mosaic of bringing life to the world. Remember that there's no greater or lesser gifts, and we need to remember that, because sometimes in Paul's church there were some that are going, hey, I can speak in tongues, so I'm a better Christian than you. And Paul says, no. The things that we don't see are often more important than the things we do see. And last, to remember, to develop and grow, to plant a seed of significance in your heart is answer the question, yes. Is this universe a God-given friendly place, ultimately? Or is it a place of hostility and pain? And I agree, that is a leap of faith. But there's a lot of times you'll never discover the truth of that until you step off the boat and give yourself to it. And I invite you to do that tonight. And to end, this great proverb from the Cherokees, about an Indian grandfather, and he's a Cherokee brave, and he's telling his grandson about the battle that often goes on inside of us. He said, my son, the battle between the two wolves inside of us, there's two wolves in all of us, and one is evil, and is anger, and jealousy, and greed, and resentment, and lies, and false pride, and ego. And he says there's another wolf inside of us. It's a good wolf. It's joy and peace and love and humility and kindness and generosity and compassion and faith. And the grandson thought about what the grandfather said for a minute and asked his grandfather. He said, but grandfather, if these two wolves are, which one wins? And you know what he said? It's the one that you feed. Let's feed the goodness. Let's give our lives the goodness. At home, praying around your table, come and continue to worship the goodness of God. But let me tell you, if it stays in here, then we're not doing what God calls us to. Take it and work. Live and feed the good wolf. And all God's people said. Amen.